Hey everybody, I'm Jason Mefford and I'm back with Brad Miller, and today we're walking a spiritual path with you. And today's episode is kind of based on a video that Brad came across. I think it was this last week.
Mhm.
And so he found it, felt called to listen to it, forwarded it to me. um, I felt called to listen to it. I forwarded it on to some other people that I know as well. And it's really it takes a Jungian, so Carl Jung and kind of Jungian philosophy or psychology concept about ideation, individuation, I think is how he called it, and some of the dark night of the soul, the loss of the ego. And from a psychological perspective, that he kind of taught, but it has a lot of relevance and application in our spiritual lives. And we've kind of hinted at this in some other episodes, and we thought that we would, talk a little bit today because it resonated with both of us. It resonated with people that I forwarded it to. And so we're guessing it probably resonates with all of you as well. And I think is one of those things that, in this space, it's good to share. It's good to hear people share because a lot of times we go through things that we think we're the only ones that are going through it. We think we're crazy. We can't understand until we realize that other people are going through exactly the same things. So, Brad, maybe do you want to share a little bit about, what stood out to you? What was it, about this video that really,
Mhm.
called to you as you were listening to it, and how that relates to our spiritual journey?
I don't remember how I came across the video, but at some point I came across this video and saw the title and was like, that's something I need to listen to. And I know we've talked a lot about kind of when you get those nudges, you follow them. You may not understand why at the time, but I've again as we go down this path, uh, whenever I something comes up like that, a nudge, a pull, I just follow it. I, kind of do what I feel that needs to be done. And at some point, usually it comes across, this is why I needed to do that, or this was the benefit to me of doing that. So, came across this video and someone says, hey, this is one that might be a good one to listen to. So I did. And it was only 15, 20 minutes. So it was a relatively short video. Definitely not as long as we like to babble on every episode. But kind of as Jason alluded to, the premise behind the video was that for the oftentimes people who are on the spiritual path at some point, and they use the word awakening, but at some point you kind of start realizing that hey, a lot of the material things that are in life, all this kind of stuff that we think is the was important, money and jobs and careers and achievement and getting to the top and all this kind of stuff like that, the corporate ladder, whatever it might be. Um, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. It's not that important. And a lot of times people get to that point and like, well, shit, if that's not important, what is? Like, what's even worth it if I'm not going to be, trying to grow my business, my law practice, my accounting practice, whatever, if I'm not trying to make partner, if I'm not trying to make millions of dollars. Well, what even are we here for? Like, what's the purpose? And kind of was a video talking about how sometimes people kind of get into this lull, um, not necessarily clinical, but almost like a little depression of just lack of motivation, of not knowing what they want to do with their lives at that point, and just kind of like, I think they talked about calling it the hermit phase, where you just kind of withdraw from everything else because nothing else seems to have relevance to you. After you've kind of, and part of it is we talked about shedding your ego or kind of, doing some of those things talked about. Um, But as I was listening to this, I could kind of relate to some of the things they were talking about. Some of the ideas of no longer finding importance in a lot of the material things that we do in the day to day. I don't have interest in making millions of billions of dollars and working hard and grinding and, trying to grow something for the purpose of growing it and achievements and all these things. Like a lot of those things that we're told that this is what you strive to do. I mean, I know in the legal profession anyway, there's this big thing about you work hard, you work long hours, you do whatever the client asks of you, and you work your way up. And after 7, 10 years, you make partner, and there's this brass ring that now you've made it. You've made partner now, right? And then you get to have all the money and all the the houses, and you get to have the cars and the private schools, and you're a big thing at this point. And none of that really appeals to me anymore. I know when I started law practice, when I was in law school, I thought of the prestige of being a lawyer. I thought of, being in a courtroom in a suit and tie or behind the bench as a judge. Those were kind of some of the things that I wanted to feel that importance, that there was something that I was, important person. I was trying to achieve, accomplish all these things, but I don't care about that stuff. And so for a while, I did go through a point where I was it wasn't questioning what's the purpose of life, why we're here, is it worth even, some of those really dark places that you might go, but it was still a thing of like, well, all right, I don't really care about achievement. I'm not really caring about making, Scrooge McDuck type money. What is there to do? Like, what should I be doing? Like, what do I want to need to focus on? Like, what's my goal here? And we've talked about this, I think, on other episodes. Um, I kind of wondered. I felt like I didn't know what was like I didn't have a path. And I still don't know for certain what that all looks like. I know that I am drawn to serve others. That is one thing that's kind of come out that I feel more important than achievement is how can I serve? How can I help others? More important than the money and the prestige and all that kind of stuff. How many fancy suits that I have or having the latest watches or anything like that. More of like, how can I grow myself spiritually? How can I grow as an individual? How can I grow on a soul level? Those things are more important to me. And again, the spiritual path doesn't come with a map. There's no like, tour guide book that says, in 5 miles, if you follow this path, you're going to hit this point. And there's a really cool lookout at that point. And then if you keep on going down the path, you'll do some switchbacks. And then before you know it, there's another really cool, you don't get that with the spiritual path. And so I've been taking it as a see where things go. I've got some nudges in some directions that I'm kind of going. So I've kind of headed in a little bit of a direction and listening to signs, listening to reactions of others when I kind of put myself out there to kind of see, hey, is this direction that feels right? Do I need to make a change and stuff? And I don't know what ultimately it's going to be. I don't know where this path leads. I don't know what I look like in 2 years, let alone 15 or 20 years. Um, but now I figured that, as this video felt very relevant to me, that likely those who are watching, you guys are probably can identify with some of these things as well. Whether it's the no longer caring about the materialistic stuff, maybe it's just feeling listless, like a ship kind of drifting, waiting for a wind to catch it or just deciding where to go. And so, like Jason said about sharing, I think can be really beneficial so that that hey, you're not alone. There are other people having this same feelings. I'm having the same stuff. We're all just maybe in different places along this path, but there's a lot of commonalities that we've all faced. As we kind of go this path, as we kind of go from this egocentric life to something looking for something bigger, something more.
Well, and I think, if we go back to the movie The Matrix, red pill, blue pill, right? Is most of the people in this life, and there's nothing wrong with it. We all have our choice. We all accomplish or do different things in different lives, for different reasons. And most of the people here are taking the blue pill. They're in the pod, they're, in their own little 3D reality. They're living in the fear and the anxiety and the materialistic, trying to get the gold watch and the, private schools and prestige and the honors of men. And again, that's if that's what you want, that's fine. Everybody has their choice to do what they want to do, and we shouldn't judge other people if that's what they choose.
Hmm.
But the reality is, and I'm not going to lie to you, when you take the red pill and you start waking up, your whole life, your whole belief structure often starts to crumble. And it doesn't just crumble once, okay? It's going to continue to crumble your whole life as you make more progress. Now, for some people, that's scary, and so some people start down the path and they finally get to a point and they're like, nope, I'm out. Tag me, I'm out, right? This is too hard. I'm
Put
not
me
going to
back
do
in the
it
pod.
anymore. Put me
Yeah.
back in the pod, and that's fine too,
Hmm.
if people want to do that. And so, these feelings are normal, right? Because as our belief structures start to change, it feels like we're dying a little bit. And so that's why, there's a term shamanic death that a lot of people will use. Well, it's kind of like that. A part of you is dying because a part of your belief structure is going away and you don't know what to do yet. You realize that something is not true, but you don't know what to believe now, right? And so you're
Hmm.
caught in this void in the in between, and sometimes that can be pretty scary. It leads to, a lot of people that I know on this path. I mean, I just read something from somebody I've known for several years, and her divorce just got finalized, this last week. And it's like, I know a lot of people that, on this path end up losing their relationships, divorce, whatever. Maybe it's with kids, maybe it's with parents, other people they know. That's a normal thing on this path. And for some people, that's pretty hard. All right. Some people, choose to do something different to make money. And, even to the point that honestly, some people actually kill themselves because they just don't know what to do. And they get into this place that they can't get out of. And they feel like, that this life is not worth living anymore and choose to take their own life. Now, it is worth living. Okay, so I'm going to tell you that right now. And so if anybody's feeling that way, don't think that that's the way out. Because what's going to happen is you're going to bounce around and go, shit, I just really screwed up. Now I've got a bunch of stuff I got to work through in my next life because I chose to tap out sooner than I had agreed to. Right. And so karma, you make it up later on. But but I think, what I am learning more and more is to be comfortable with the way the waves flow. There's going to be certain times when we feel like we're in this void, and then we're not. And then we go back into it again, right? And so we need to treat it more like a game or like we're surfing on the ocean, right? You don't catch a wave all the time. In fact, if you go to the beach and you sit there and you watch the surfers, what are they doing most of the time? They're sitting on their boards waiting for the next ride. They're in the void. And if you notice, when they catch a wave, the ride is very short-lived, but it's very exhilarating, right? And so I never surfed, but I boogie boarded because I have a problem with my balance, couldn't get up very good. And, a lot of times when I'd be out there in the water, it's like, am I ever going to catch another wave? Right. And you almost feel like giving up, and it's like, screw it, I'm going to go back on the beach and have a hot dog. And then all of a sudden you catch a wave and you ride it in, and the exhilaration is so great, and you're like, all right, I'm going back out for more, right? And so, when we talk about being balanced too, don't think of it as being balanced in linear time either, right? Like for the next hour, I'm going to feel great. And then for an hour, I'm going to be in the void. And then an hour after that, I'm going to feel great. It doesn't work that way. Okay. It doesn't work that way. But, I think, too, that when we're in these voids is to remind ourselves about the perspective, about the bigger perspective, the eternal perspective, right, of what we're going through. And we've talked about this before. It's like there's a lot of people who choose to give up their, six-figure corporate job and want to go be a monk somewhere. And again, if that's what you choose, that's fine. But that's not what most of us are here to do. And so, even as I heard Brad, talking about what he wants to do, and what he wants to do is serve. Well, Brad, you serve as being a lawyer too, right?
Yeah.
And so let's not forget some of the very simple things about this, right? Because the true path is doing everything with love and joy. Did you get that? Everything with love and joy in the present moment. Because when you're doing that, all the other stuff is happening in the background that needs to be happening. So, right, it's like showing up and serving with love and joy your clients or whoever that may be. That's part of the path,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because what ends up happening, and I see people do this all the time, is they keep jumping and they keep running and looking for the next thing because they don't stick with it. Like I know some people that, I mean, they've tried every different little, training and whatever that's out there, right? They just keep jumping from people to people to people and going to retreats and doing this and that and this and that. And it's like any of them doesn't matter. One is as good as the others, but it's how you do it. It's the path with heart. It's picking a path with heart, but it's walking the path with heart. It doesn't matter the path, right? What only matters is that it's the path with heart for you, not for anybody else, you know? Uh, I mean, and so I think that's even in these times of the void, we can find ways to immerse ourselves in what seems to be normal things. Okay, and I'll give you a simple example, right? I'm in a void time in my life right now. Okay, and I'm not gonna lie to you, it's pretty intense for me, right? But I don't show up and show everybody that. A few people that I work with closely kind of know, because we talk about it because some of them are in the same place, but I don't share that publicly, right? Because I'm working through it. I'm doing what I need to do. I'm lacking some of the motivation as well. Now, part of that is, we have to rest before we can go again. But as an example, okay, I needed to repair my fence at my house. Okay. This is a normal, everybody would say, oh my gosh, Jason, this is just 3D. 3D. Okay.
Depends what fence you're talking about, I suppose. But yeah.
Okay. So I don't have neighbors right next to me. Like I've got 50 feet or a road between like every neighbor except one. Okay. And they're, I don't know, 20 feet away. Right. And so, which hasn't been a problem since I've been living here because nobody was ever there. Right. So the house sold, right about the time I bought it. They spent a year fixing it up. They sold it to somebody who made it look like it was a vacation home for them. They were never there, right? And my property's a little bit higher than theirs is, and so I only had like a 2.5 feet fence. All right, so you can see over. From
Mm.
my kitchen window, I could see right into their living space area and their porches on, and front doors on my side, right, with my kitchen window. And so it hasn't been a problem because nobody's been there, right? And then all of a sudden, again, which happens often, they decide to turn it into a short-term rental. And so all of a sudden now, people are there and they're sitting on the front porch and they're blaring music and they're leaving the front porch light on, which is blaring into my kitchen window, right? All these things. And so it seems like a relatively 3D thing, right? But I spent time thinking about how I could co-create it. Okay, I mean, I grew up in construction. My dad was a contractor. I know how to build a fence. I know how to build it lots of different ways. I built many fences over my life, right? I've repaired fences. I built fences. I know how to do it. But I had an interesting challenge with this fence because first off, I didn't want to rip the whole thing out.
Sure.
And I wanted to reuse as much of it as possible, right? And so I had that issue with the neighbor, but I also had the way they did the fence, they left too big of spaces, and so bunnies can actually get in. So I've been trying to have a garden, but the bunnies keep eating everything that I plant. So I gotta bunny guard it too. And so for a month or more, I just dreamed and mentally went through various options of how can I fix this fence? How can I reuse most of the stuff, right? Because most people would rip down the whole fence, throw it in the trash. And it's like, no, for the most part, the posts are pretty stable. The pickets, some of them need to be fixed, but I wanted to try to reuse everything so I wasn't wasteful as well.
Hmm.
But I also needed it to be 6 feet, for a certain portion of it to block me from the neighbor instead of 2.5 feet.
Hmm.
And so, as I said, I mentally, right? So again, now this is in the spiritual realm. This is not, and it's not just thinking, okay, which is, now if I'm going to convey this or not. It wasn't me 3D thinking my way through it, but it was me using knowing and source to come up with different possibilities of how I could do this. And there's many different ways I could do it. And so I kept thinking about it and sitting with it and not trying to think my way through it, but figure out which one felt the best. And so I waited until it felt like one of the solutions was good. And I'm pretty proud of myself in a way. I mean, it's like kind of interesting how I've done it, right? If you were to look at the fence from my side, you'd have no idea what's going on, but I was able to really kind of reuse everything. Not re I had to buy new material
Sure.
for part of it. But and so, you know, that is actually part of spirituality too. Connecting with source,
Hmm.
figuring out different ways in which we can co-create things. There's so many different possibilities, right? And how can Jason make a fence that is art that only Jason can make? My fence is the only fence like this in the whole world. I guarantee it, right? Nobody else did it the way that I did it. And I'm not quite done yet because I got to a point and it's like, oh, well, there's a couple of different ways of how I can finish this fence as well, right? Because there's a couple of finishing touches and other things that I need to do on it. And so, again, I've been sitting with it and trying to decide which one feels right. Do I use the 2x4s on it, or do I do 4x4s on this one to reinforce the post? Right? So I still actually have a little bit left to do on it. That got really hot, so I haven't done it yet, but maybe it'll be this weekend. Okay. Now, again, you may sit there and think, oh, what does that have to do with spirituality, right? Well, here's another thing that has to do with it is I've been in the void. I've found it hard to motivate myself to do a lot of different things. But I still have to ground in to the 3D present moment and do things with love and joy, right? If I feel like laying in bed all day, that's fine. But lay in bed all day feeling love and joy as you're lying in bed, right? Instead of just thinking about whatever. So, me actually spending 2 or 3 days working on this fence, working physically with my body, being able to pull my tools out that I love to use, firing up the power saw and the nail gun and everything else, and literally strapping on my tool pouch
So
um,
chasing
that
the tool
I've
man, Taylor.
Jason the tool man, the tool belt that I've had for 30 some years. Was very satisfying. It was very joyful, right? And as I'm sitting there making the fence and loving on the wood, that's going into it, and I'm trying to take apart the part that I have to take apart with fairly gently, right? I mean, I could just demo it with a sledgehammer and break everything. But I was trying to do it with more respect and love for that wood and my connection with the wood and reusing as much as possible, right? So resources of Pachamama are not wasted as well, right? And so the whole time I'm going through that, anybody looking at me would be thinking, well, that guy's just building a fence. Yeah, I'm building a fence, but I'm not just building a fence. Okay. And this is again one of the things that I've learned and I intend to live every day is whatever we're doing, that's not really what we're doing. Yes, we're doing it, but we're doing something else. And the more that but people don't see that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's why, a lot of people think I'm crazy, think this is too simple, think it's whatever, right? No, I got to go meditate in an ashram and do this and that and the other. And, don't get me wrong. I mean, I've got altars and other things going all over my house. I'm doing other things that people would think of as
Mm-hmm.
spiritual, right? But a lot of our lives are not that. It's helping your clients. It's
Mm-hmm.
going to work. It's making dinner for your family. It's building a fence. And these are all things that are part of this life, right? And so we miss out on one of the biggest benefits of being here. This is a unique planet of free choice, of carbon-based body that can experience all these things. Okay, and people don't realize we need to enjoy and love being in our body and being able to experience some of the things that we can experience. Human sex? Holy crap, right? When done right. Okay, I mean that's a human experience. Just as an example, right? Building a fence. Maybe that is too. I don't know.
For
And
some,
so
yeah.
And so we're not, I've found a lot of joy and satisfaction in doing that. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
people wouldn't. That's fine, right? But it works for me. And that's why there's no one path for any one of us. It's
Mm-hmm.
whatever brings us joy and whatever we can do with love and joy in the present moment, right? And the more that we can do that. So I think And this is what is so damaging in some ways when people get to this dark night of the soul, whatever you want to call it. A lot of times they just want to sit there, and it's wasting away. And don't get me wrong, right? There's times when we go through it, there's times why we have to go through it. But even when we're going through it, we can consciously and intentionally, right, do things to ground ourselves, do things to make a little bit of progress, towards what we want. And so that whole idea, because, again, what's interesting, Brad sent me that video the same day. A friend of mine that we messaged back and forth, but I've known him for shit, almost 35 years probably, right? But sent me a similar message. He sent me actually an article, and then he sent me a recorded talk that was in a lot of ways about the same topic too. And so we had a little exchange back and forth. And, when there are so many possibilities, that also usually trips people up.
Mm-hmm. Too many choices.
Too many choices. When you go into In-N-Out Burger, hey, you only got a couple of choices, right? And so, that's easier to decide what you want than if you go into a place like Cheesecake Factory that has a book for a
Mm-hmm.
menu, right? That one's a little bit harder. Like, well, what do I feel like today?
Mm-hmm.
But it's that way in our life too, right? So even like Brad, you're sitting there and it's like you're thinking about different things, right? You're getting some clarity, but not everything. That's what I was doing with my fence too. So every little thing that we're doing, right, is just like, okay, well, should I still be in this relationship? I don't know, right? Most people would say, fuck it, I'm out of the relationship, right? You don't understand me. I'm different, you know? When sometimes being in that relationship could be your test, could be your challenge, right? And there are things that you need to learn from it. And so, you know,
Mm-hmm.
it's not that we don't want to act, but we also don't want to act rashly as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think this time of being in the void, of looking at possibilities, um, and figuring out what it is that you want to co-create is actually a beautiful time.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, we've talked about the fact that like life is seasons,
Mhm.
right? And so you've got, everyone loves the autumn, the fall, when you're the harvest and getting, celebration and all that stuff. Um, but you don't get to any of that unless you have the winter, unless you have the rest,
Mhm.
you know? And so we need that time to rest, to recover, to be with the darkness. Winter is a time of darkness, so you need that time to confront some of the issues that are there, to be able to help you then go forward to the spring and want to plant new things. Um, but you can't all of a sudden just go from fall right into spring. You need that downtime, right? You need that time to figure out, okay, here's what worked well. What do I need to look at? How do I need to fix? You can't just say, all right, here's my corn harvest. Now I'm going to turn around tomorrow and plow this field up and throw some more corn in the ground and go at it again. Like you need that downtime, you need the rest, you need the recovery.
Well, there's often planning that goes into it too, and I think sometimes we don't realize that is, you know, for the farmer, because as you were talking about farming, my family's been whole generations of farmers too, for a long time. And just like you said, you you harvest everything in the fall, you know, but you're also doing other stuff. You're
Mm-hmm.
storing up,
Yep.
right? What's the first thing that, farmers used to do? Hey, the first part of the harvest is the seeds for next year,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so we kind of forget that. Like today, oh, you just go down to whatever and you buy your seeds online or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But even still, you can't wait until the day you're plowing to go get your seeds necessarily. there's sometimes little bits of progress along the way that need to be made, right? So you're getting your seeds for the next planting time. You're resting because honestly, farming is hard work. You're working your butt off for many, many months and you need that rest. But also there's things that maybe need to be done. Maybe the fence needs to be fixed during the winter time.
Hmm.
Maybe you need to, nourish the soil with
Sharpen the
fertilizer,
tools,
sharpen
repair the
your
tractor.
sharpen your tools, all these things, right?
Hmm.
And again, it's like, these are the little things that are a part of the bigger, but most of us would look at it and think, oh, this is just 3D. This is not really anything. But sharpening your tools, doing everything with love and joy, right? Yeah, if we're going to rough and frickin' fricker fricker, right? Well, that's different. It's you're still doing something, but it's different than going out there and saying, "Oh, tractor, I love you. Let's give you an oil change. Let's wash you up. Let's do whatever we need to do, right? Because I love you. I'm grateful for you because you make it so much easier. My grandfather had to use a horse and plow, and wow, you make my life so much easier. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Right?
Hmm. Yep. So, so yeah, a lot of different things just from that video. And there's lots more things in there too. Like that was just kind of again the things that really jumped out at me when I was listening, that I found particularly relevant or that I could relate to. But like I said, you found some other things that you related to, and um, you know, layers of the onion and all that. And but yeah, but again, I think this is a really good example of sharing things of experiences that others can see, so that you're not alone when you're going through these things. You're going to come to times where you feel like you're in a void, where it's darkness, where you feel unmotivated to do anything. You just don't know what direction to turn. The things that used to matter don't matter to you anymore, and you don't know what matters now. Where do I go? The idea of, I think something that the video was like, you've woken up from the life that you had, or your identity and everything was before, but you've not yet woken up into the new identity and path. Like you don't know where next. Now what? What does this mean? Like what's the next steps along the way? Um, you get to that point in the path where you're like, well, I'm here at the top of the hill, but now I see a couple different paths and I just don't know really to go. So I'm just gonna sit here, and like you said, sit with it, and maybe it takes a couple weeks to figure out which path to go. But you just kind of listen to the nudges and the feelings, and um,
Well, and while you're listening for the nudges, do the little things to keep yourself in the present with love and joy, right? Because just sitting around going, "Oh, universe, give it to me, 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 give it to me," it's not going to happen,
mhm.
right? Go take a shower. How much of the time when you turn on the water and you get underneath there and all of a sudden it's like, boom, oh my goodness, there's my answer, right? Or
And
if you're
sometimes that
sitting,
works
it's
with
some, it,
topics for podcasts for us, but that's not my
well,
kind
and
of
I
thing.
know a
But
lot of people that's how they get their answers is in the
yeah.
shower, you know. And but just think about, what can you do for the next whatever amount of time,
Mhm.
right? Those times when I'm feeling that lack of motivation, it's like, okay, well, I need to do something. And so what do I feel like doing? And maybe it's washing the dishes. Maybe it's sweeping my house. Maybe it's raking my yard. Right? I don't mow my yard, I rake my yard. Um, but whatever it is, right? What can I do for the next 15 minutes or the next hour that I can just immerse myself into? Right. And sometimes again, maybe it's things that you have been putting off or you don't want to do. Maybe that's exactly what you do need to do. I don't know. I mean, it's different. It's going to be different for everybody. But when you're in those voids, and you're working through things, just try to find something that you can do for the next little while in love and joy, that may seem or look like it's 3D, but it is not, right? Because grounding you in the present moment, having you feel love and joy is part of your evolvement. And so it's helping you work through that darkness and you don't even realize it, right? And so, again, that's what I'm doing. That's why if somebody followed me around, they'd be like, "What does this guy do?"
Does he have a job? Like, what the heck?
I know. Is he retired? Is he semi-retired? What is he doing? He's like puttering. Yeah, but puttering with intention.
I like it. Puttering with
Mm-hmm.
intention. Maybe
Yeah,
that should be a shirt. Puttering with intention.
I putter with intention. Of course, some people think it is about golf, right? I putt with intent. Anyway,
That's
all
something
right.
different. That's something
So
different.
if you're feeling, that way, Brad and I are feeling this way too. Here's some ways that we're kind of working through it as well, and it's just get used to it, have fun with it, because it's not going to be the last time, right?
Mhm.
But the more you go through it, the better you're going to get, and the easier it's going to get to go through each time.
So, thank you guys for listening today, for watching us putter around intentionally as we go through here. Um, Again, if you're experiencing some of these things, you're not alone. We all have different aspects of it that we're working through. Um, and again, we think it's good to share these so that you know that there's others out there, and maybe you got some insight on how you can deal with it, or a new perspective you can take on where you are right now. Um, yeah, so value, value there for everybody. So thank you guys again for listening. And we'll guess catch you guys on the next episode.
All right, see you, everybody.